Hi, I'm Larry Butler for the East Hawaii Cultural Center here in Hilo, Hawaii. And it is my pleasure today to introduce some of the artists and the guest curator in our beautiful new exhibition, Terra Forme, the curator, Dr. Koan Jeff Baysa, and we have a number of artists, three of whom are going to join us today and talk about their work. This is a work comparing volcanic arts from all over the world in a way, and one of our artists here is from Iceland. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is Halldór Ásgeirsson. I'm an Icelandic artist coming from a volcanic island as Hawaii, but it's a cold climate there with lot of glaciers and volcanoes, especially in the center of the country. But it's a fairly big island in the North Atlantic Ocean between Norway and Greenland. And I started to work with volcanic stones, it's about 30 years ago, or 29 years ago, exactly, 93. I knew inside myself the year before that I would find something one day, a method that would be very important for my art in the future. I had made some experiments with fire before and doing all kinds of works with driftwood and smoke drawings. And before that, I was probably based by this new painting generation in the 80s with very colorful paintings and installations. But always from the beginning of my work as an artist, my basic things are the prime elements, earth and fire, and water, and then the wind. Those are all elements very presented in my country. I brought those material with me from Iceland to Hawaii. The lava stone in the center of the circle is from Reykjanes Peninsula, is close by Reykjavik, the capital. And actually now this area is very active. And we had 2 years ago a volcano that ended last year. And then a new one started just a few days ago. So that is interesting to know. And while I was here in Hawaii, then I saw in the news that there was a new outbreak. The lava glass you can see around this lava stone. For me, when I saw it and picked it up, it was like a head of a man, but it was volcanic head. Mm-hmm. And then, because I couldn't melt a volcanic stone here in Hawaii, so I took it with me that I already had melted in Iceland. So I use a torch, it's a gas, oxygen. So in just few seconds, after I have hung up the stone, it's in the air, I start to work on it, and the stone gets liquid in few seconds and starts to leak. And those drops goes down on the floor, and sometimes it creates this very fine hair. We call
show us maybe.
Yeah, it's called witch hair in Icelandic mythology, but here in Hawaii, I think you call it Pelis hair.
Pele's hair, yes, and of course those of us who live here, it's a nuisance, and it's lovely to see it through your eyes as a poetic thing.
So that's the finest I get out of the stone, is this very fine hair.
That's amazing. So all of these pieces have been blowtorched and melted and turned into these crystalline
transformed
things.
Into another material. And what I was interested in me from the really beginning, it was the transformation of the material from this rough lava stone into very fine, delicate objects, nearly like jewelry. And then I started to make drawings out of some of these filaments. And just take like one here. And
isn't that beautiful?
And I make a very precise drawing out of this, for example, this phenomenon. And then I use those drawings. Sometimes I blow them up, and I do paintings or whatever. And then what you can see on the wall is some kind of a result of that. So I have made those drawings before on thick paper or cartoon, and then I cut it, and afterwards I put my own colors, acrylic colors, so that's my fantasy. So those are like, they are flying in the air, so they are somewhere above or connected to what you can see on the ground.
I see. Now I understand that elves are an enormous part of the folk culture of Iceland, and I assume that's one of the great connections between the volcanoes and folklore.
Yeah, well, it has never been related actually with the volcanoes. It's more like when in the old days, when all the Icelanders lived in the countryside on farms. And they lived in turf houses, and it was a pretty hard life. And they were very poor and had to work a lot. And then they started to look at there were cliffs or stones. They started to tell stories of elves, of beautiful people dressed in delicate clothes, and they lived there. And sometimes they came out of the stone in around maybe New Year or Christmas, and then they walked into rock cliffs that opens, and it was like a huge church, and the light came through. So the people were really fascinated by it, and so in the dark winter they told stories of the elves like that. And though this elf belief is still in Iceland, like when they are doing roads, and if there is a cliff that is known to be an elf cliff, they have to turn around or make a deal with the elves.
Well, isn't that thoughtful? Well, this is wonderful because, of course, one aim of this show is not just to show volcanoes, which of course are beautiful, but to show how they've interacted with people and become part of the folklore.
Yes.
And this is just a beautiful example. It's beautiful visually, it's fascinating technically, and it fits that theme so nicely.
Yeah, so those could be elves. I call it lava elves.
Lava elves, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
that helps us understand this beautiful work so much better.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Another one of our artists is also from Iceland, currently living in LA.
Hi, I'm Heimir Björgúlfsson, and I'm living now in Los Angeles, California. For the last 16 years. I lived in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, for about 7 years or so. Before that, spent about a year going back and forth, and since 2006, permanently in Los Angeles, yes.
I see. Now this is interesting. Our previous artist, Halldór, is based in Iceland, does his work about Icelandic volcanism. This brings us to the Big Island, doesn't it?
Yes,
Could you
it
please
does.
tell us what these birds are doing in a volcano show?
Yes, so I approach these works a little differently than normal because normally my work deals with the adaptation of species and how we as humans interact with our environment and nature. And then when I was asked if I could possibly be part of this show, and what I would find interesting would be to actually make a work from a perspective of where I come from, where much like here, growing up with the, I wouldn't say threat, but coexisting with volcanoes is very much a part of daily life. And you know, earthquakes happen a lot every month, and this is just something you're very used to. And then, so I started doing my research about the animal life around the volcano lava fields on the Big Island, and then I came across the white-tailed tropic bird, which is a fairly common seabird around the Pacific. But what they've done here is, I found it remarkable, and it just reminded me of human beings about being resilient in your environment. So when the volcano became dormant, they took up residency in the crater, but then the volcano became active, they did not move out of the crater. They're still, and they don't seem to be bothered by all the sulfur smoke. And
that's fascinating. Now, how did you come across this?
Online research, basically, and just doing research, and you know how such is life. You're researching something, and then you randomly come across something that piques your interest, and then you just go with it. And then I started, you know, thinking about other species of animals and birds, and I basically was I always came back to this. This was the most extraordinary story of a bird species defying their environment to stay, much like human beings do. I saw the parallel between human evolution there, basically. That's kind of how I read it. But in this painting, I decided to not only have the sort of sulfur fog with the white-tailed tropic bird going in and out of it here, maybe a little more in a poetic way, sort of, but I put the owl, the special Hawaiian owl, which is a little bit smaller subspecies of the similar owls elsewhere.
The pu'eo.
The pu'eo, and then the native butterflies that are. And I mean, a lot of my work is always based on this ideology of a collage, like to create an impossible situation that actually relates back to our reality today. And you'd never find those butterflies in this situation with the owl like that. But in this painting you do.
This is fascinating.
Although this actually doesn't seem to be so collaged in a way. This like, this one is like, this could be a photograph maybe of the birds, but I just kind of did this composition of what works in what brings the point across to me, in my opinion. Anyway.
This is fascinating. And I'm a resident here, and we all have, as you grew up with, we have a kind of an intimate connection with the volcanoes. And there's always something that triggers. And it's interesting, the birds triggered it here. When did you first come to this island?
A few days ago.
Really? Really? Has it lived up to your expectations?
It's been great staying here, and it's been really, really great. You know, you see the similarities with the lava rocks, and although it's like the opposite in terms of temperature and the flora and all that, where I come from. But it's been like you see the similarities of and also the locals, what they think about the volcano is more like, yeah, it's there, and they're not obsessed with it, just like Icelandic people are not obsessed with
their neighbors.
You know?
You know, it's funny. I had been to Iceland just before my first trip to the Big Island.
Oh, really?
We got here and we said, my gosh, this is Iceland with better beaches.
Right. With the
but the similarities were striking.
The black sand beaches and stuff like that.
Of course, ours are warmer.
I'd say, yeah, considerably, considerably.
Well, this is really lovely.
And the fascination with birds goes back to when I was a kid. I wanted to be an ornithologist when I was growing up.
I see.
And I was quite nerdy about that. I was in the bird society, but by far the youngest on their excursions, and I made my parents, or they offered, but I got them to take me camping. And up in the northeast, there's a lake there that has a very specific variety of birds. And it was really early in the spring because that was the mating time, and I said, no, this would be the best time to go see them. And there was nobody else camping. It was so cold. But they did this for me, and I appreciate that today, And then I didn't become, and then I just became a teenager, and you become interested in something else, music, chasing after girls, whatever, you become a teenager. And then years later, kind of by default, then I started making drawings in art school. Without really even just knowing what I was getting into, I just kind of started drawing the birds again. But this time they sort of function as metaphors for human situations and how we are in our environment and nature, basically.
That's wonderful. It fits so nicely with the theme of the show, which is, to some extent, interactions between volcanoes and creatures and how they've evolved over time. This is a metaphor, if you wish, that I never would have thought of. This is quite enriching.
It's, and it's still evolving, Who knows how it's going to be if we're still around 5,000 years from now.
That's an open question.
It's an open question at this point. So, and who's around and what else is around, and
Very well, Heimir, thank you so much for talking with us about your work.
Well, thank you.
I'd like to introduce Mucyo, who is our artist from Africa in the exhibit. He is Rwandan French and has designed some very beautiful works here that are based on two great volcanoes in Congo, near where you grew up, I guess?
Yes.
And so you're quite familiar, and they have wonderful, wonderful stories behind them. Maybe you could tell us about this lady here. Who is she?
She's a Nyiragongo, so that's the main volcano close to where I live. I live in Gisenyi. It's in Rwanda, but it's at the border with Congo, the place called Goma. And you have a volcano, I think it's the largest crater, like active crater, lava lake in Africa.
Oh, Nyiragongo.
Yeah, Nyiragongo, and it's been in eruption like a year ago somehow. Yeah, a year ago, and just 2 hours, 1 hour and a half, 2 hours for where I live. So
that's a very heavily populated area, isn't it?
Very populated, very populated. And that's the thing, though. She erupted. She erupted like 18 years ago, or something. And the lava flow basically cut the city in half. So everybody left, ran out, and then they started to rebuild on top of the
they're building on the lava now.
On the lava.
Just like here.
Yeah, that's and then boom, last year happened again. And now people are actually really considering seeing if it's, might be wise actually to relocate the city itself of Goma.
So these two volcanoes have evolved in cultural practice, have evolved different identities.
Yeah, that's it.
So she is...
Nyiragongo, she's the fierce one. She's she doesn't really manifest herself oftenly, but whenever she does, it's quite violent.
Let's take a look at this.
Oh, cool.
An example of that. So this is the wrath of Nyiragongo.
Yeah.
Andre is bringing his camera over here. And oh my goodness, look at this.
Yeah, the wrath of Nyiragongo with the lava lake on the floor.
So you told me that both of these volcanoes, the names are women's names.
Yes.
And they have complementary personalities.
Yes.
Which resonates here in Hawaii with Pele and the stories of Pele and her
Indeed,
family.
indeed. That's why I was very pleased actually, like to bring also like my share of my input from this volcano when I heard the story of Pele. So this is the Nyiragongo, literally, and then you have like the volcano. I mean the lava on the floor, some mica.
So
and
let me see. This is velvet, and you haven't painted. You've bleached. I think.
bleach. I bleached on the velvet, and it brings this reddish color, depending on the original ink use, you know, to get it. But yeah, and then of course there's black sand. It was kind of a mix of cultural exchange, we can say that, you know, between Hilo and
this is our black sand.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And then some mica here.
Mica from Gisenyi
I see.
in Goma.
That's beautiful. Let's take a look at the other
Great.
personified volcano. And we are looking at Nyamuragira.
Nyamuragira, yes. So that's the sister. So Nyamuragira, it's the most active volcano in Africa.
I see.
And the story goes that, you know, she, in order to calm down the sister Nyiragongo, who's actually very powerful whenever she bursts, she's releasing the tension by being in eruption more frequently, but less in intensity.
So in Hawaiian terms, I understand she is a shield volcano,
Yes.
and so the eruptions are more gentle.
That's exactly.
Okay, like Kilauea.
Yes, yeah.
Oh my goodness. And so I read in your statement that apparently local women will in fact honor both of the volcano spirits.
True. Yeah, yes, that's in the folklore, they used to actually like to give offering, like milk.
Bring offerings.
And
as people do here.
that's we all have this point comma. I don't know how to say that in English. This it's really related. But it's true. I mean, I really believe that it's like any living things, any things that actually resonate. It's we can say it's a living organism. You know, the volcanoes form themselves. They have their time when they eruption, and then they get dormant, and then they get extinct. So it's kind of a life cycle. And as humans, as any living organism on Earth. So yes,
Well, thank you so much for bringing these. They add so much to the show. We have one more to take a look at.
Magma, yes.
Okay. Now, who is this? It's titled Magma. What can you tell us about this piece?
Magma, she's also a figure that I would say comes out of the volcanoes, lava. So magma, she's a kind of a spirit out of the lava, out of the crater. I was actually, it could be, I was actually very inspired by the legend of the phoenix. You know, that mythical birds that goes into the fire, it dies, and then it wake up again. And this one is, we can say she's the personified version of a phoenix. And also, she also have like those two sides, you know. You can see one side on the other side that she's more like luminous.
Let's take a look over here. Oh, okay, the contrasts are a little different.
The contrast, a little bit different. So that's the luminous part. It's almost like the yin and the yang, or the light and the shadows, you know, on the duality on every subject and personalities. So that's where I started to paint with the bleach. And you have like, you can see all the little details are really well spotted. And because of the fabrics that is not super dense, the bleach actually transpired on the other side. And on the other side, it gets also like that kind of, more obscure, as if she was coming out of a dream, out of smokes, kind of more airy, a little bit more. And
This is interesting. So you start with two local anthropomorphic legendary characters and you add your own.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's
yes.
beautiful.
Yeah, I think that it's so much fun also, like to invent your own, to create your own mythology sometimes. I mean, that's what we are kind of artists, like kind of storytellers, and we can use our own stories to create awareness or beautiful, not scenario, but kind of a storytelling. You know, we're storytellers with our own instruments.
Well, thank you so much. That's a beautiful story you've just told us.
Mahalo, mahalo.
I'm delighted to introduce the guest curator of this beautiful exhibit, Koan Baysa. Thank you so much for being here and helping us talk about the show that you've put together.
Thank you.
So interesting from so many different angles. I wonder about your background. What led you to curation and curating these international shows like this?
Yeah, some people always ask, how can you resolve the careers of being a doctor and a curator? They seem so disparate. But no, the actuality is that both careers have parallels in terms of intellectual challenges, in terms of research, in terms of curiosity. I first started as a collector. That's how I got into the art world, because I was very interested in certain works, female Mexican surrealists, and there's a whole story behind that. But evolving from a collector, one who picks his own work for his own collection, that's basically what curation is. And so I decided to get some formal training. So I went through the Whitney Independent Study Program in New York, which is a non-degree awarding 1 year, quite prestigious program. And on that basis, I stayed in New York for 15 years while running a medical practice at the same time. And that segued into my writing about artworks. And now I'm a member of ICA, the Association for International Art Critics, and also a member of IKT, the International Association of Curators. So the evolution was basically from a collector to a curator to a critic, and now someone who's what I like to call myself a global curatorial advisor. So I'm working with biennials. I started a biennial in Honolulu called the Honolulu Biennial. And I've also established the I Biennale, which is an itinerant. That's what the I stands for.
I see.
And the next one will probably be in Iceland, and then in probably Tasmania in successive years. But also the Joshua Triennial, which is an event in the Joshua Tree region in California, the Mojave Desert, outside of Palm Springs. And I also work as an advisor for the Congo Biennale in Kinshasa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and for the Freshman's Biennial in Iceland. So that's kind of,
Wow.
that's it in a nutshell.
Out of all that, I'm picking out, of course, Hawaii, Iceland, Rwanda, Congo. How did you meet these particular artists?
Yeah, through the various exhibitions that I've done. So Mucyo I met in Rwanda, from Rwanda, I met in Kinshasa. Heimir I met in Los Angeles, who's actually, there's several exhibitions with him. I included both Mucyo and Heimir. So the one in Louisville, they were both in as well. And what I like doing is connecting people. So I like to introduce artists to areas they may not have ordinarily run into. So, when are you going to find a Rwandan artist, in the Big Island?
This is a first for me, yes.
Or Icelandic artists here as well. So part of it is, bringing my mission, actually, that started with the Honolulu Biennial, is to bring exposure to Hawaii artists, to other artists, by bringing them here or bringing artists from Hawaii to other exhibitions.
Now, what's the Hawaii connection initially?
I was born on Oahu, from Wailua.
Okay.
And went to high school here here meaning on Oahu at Mid-Pacific Institute. Did part of my medical training here also in Hawaii, and then finished up at UCSF in San Francisco.
So you're totally familiar with Hawaii and
pretty much.
the artists. That's
yeah,
interesting.
Pretty much. I've been trying to bring attention to artists from the outer islands, because I don't think they get enough attention. We tend to be Honolulu-centric.
We're trying to change that.
Yes, that's part of my mission. So,
Thank you.
we have artists, from here, such as someone who's present here, and took his work to Louisville as well, where we had some really nice exposure and sales. Yeah.
Now, how did you get into the whole global thing? Was that a result of medicine? Was it?
Well, I actually blame my parents for having the travel bug. We were fortunate to have, my sister and I were fortunate to have parents that loved to travel. So they took us to Mexico. They loved cruises. So we've been on cruises in the Caribbean, in Asia, the Pacific. And that kind of sparked my interest in foreign travel. And I also travel with my kids along their areas of interest. I've taken a son who was interested in horses, and so I took him to the French Military Riding Academy in Saumur in France. Took him to the Lippensers in Austria, or they actually summer in Spain. So along those interests as well. So traveling, I think, is a really great education.
The best.
It takes oneself out of one little culture and exposes you to a new culture in which you have to adapt, learn, and become more knowledgeable and knowing humanity. I think that's the message.
Sure. I've taught on some foreign travel experiences, semester at sea and so forth. I love watching the students go.
Yes, yeah. I wish at some point in time when I was going to university that I could have gone to Chapman College in California, because they had a ship.
That's our ship.
Oh, really?
Yes, I've taught 4 times.
Oh, you did? Okay, yes. That was my dream.
Around the
it's
world.
the ship that actually goes around the world. So if you're studying Greek culture, you're in Greece, and it's amazing. But
you study Japanese temples, and tomorrow we're going to Kyoto.
Yes, exactly. It's a dream. It was a dream, but I'm really happy for people that were able to do it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at some of the works, if we could. Some of the other artists that weren't able to join us. Now, I live on the Big Island.
Okay.
And part of the fun of the show for me is things I remember dazzling me when I first got here, and now are just part of my daily life. And it's lovely to see the wonder through other people's eyes.
I just want to mention that part of the show, as is written on the text as well, is a dedication to Hamilton Kobayashi.
Whose painting we were just standing in front of.
Exactly, and they're here on this wall
Let's
as well.
take a look at them.
He's a friend. He had a framing business in the Kaimaki area, and I had an office in Waialae Kahala, which is right adjacent to it. So he's a friend and passed away very recently, a couple months ago, actually.
So I understand. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, but he was a great inspiration. He put his painting career on hold to marry and have a family, and later was encouraged by a painter, Satoru Abe, in Honolulu, to take up painting again, and so he did, and has these amazing paintings. And we're very grateful to Cunningham Gallery and to Bernard Nogues, who loaned their works to this exhibition. We're very, very happy to have them.
Now, let me think about these. These are, on the surface, they're representational. They're places I know and love, or dread in the case of Fisher.
Right, yeah.
They're places anybody on the Big Island knows. What more do you see in them?
Well, I think I was impressed, and I was hoping that other people would pick up on the sheer physicality of the paintings in terms of the geomorphology. There are several themes that run through the exhibition. I say geomorphology, the concept of deep or geologic time, and indigenous beliefs, and we can get to those later. But in terms of the paintings themselves, people are very familiar with the caldera and the volcanoes, but in terms of capturing a moment in time that actually is active, visually active, I mean, here I almost feel like the heat of the volcano, basically. But I love the fact that it's also set against a serene, Mahina, the moon, in the background is so calm, but in the foreground you have this bubbling, almost palpable heat coming from the volcano. And you can feel that gravitational pull down as in the right corner, it's starting to cool on the surface. So those kinds of feelings, I think, really make the picture come alive. So although it's a static painting, there's so much dynamism and involvement of the other senses, in the paintings, that I think is the skill that Hamilton has shown here.
I sit at the gallery. Thursday afternoons.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining some of the locals coming and taking a look at that. And what we're going to remember is, I have 3 friends who lost houses down slope of that painting.
Yep. I think that's the beauty also of showing it in a local context, because people do have these associations that they can draw, visually. One can imagine, standing there looking at that, smelling the smoke, looking at the ohia trees, and remembering the legend behind ohia and lehua, right?
The legend we know, and of course, nowadays, sadly, when a local looks at this, his or her first thought might be the disease. This is our iconic local tree. This is native to the big island of Hawaii, and there's a terrible disease right now ravishing them. And so we're caught in the poignancy of the beauty and the sheer drama. Those things grow right out of lava. And we know that they're transient.
Yeah. Well, that comes out, one of the second points about deep time, because one of the points I was making in the exhibition is that the evolution of, the title, Terra Forme, comes from actually terra firma, which is, or terraforming, which comes out of the science fiction lexicon for making foreign lands useful. So people think about terraforming on Mars when we're going to, inhabit Mars. And so the idea is that things evolve over a longer period of time, beyond our lifetimes. So, for example, in a ohia forest, it'll take root maybe in 4 years or maybe shorter, but it'll take up to 25.
Out of lava.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Leslie's is one example here. But it'll take maybe 25,000 years for it to become like an ecosystem. So it's this idea that, these things will evolve past our lifetime, perhaps our grandchildren's lifetimes or even theirs. But this kind of idea of geologic or deep time is something that's rooted in a lot of the works here.
Sure. Let's take a look at some of the photographs. Again, I'm starting with the things that are descriptive. And we'll move on. I was chatting with Heimir about his bird paintings and how they caught, for me it was the ferns. That we all have this way into the lava that just blows us away. And to me it was learning that the very first thing to grow in the cracks of the fresh lava, and that is fresh lava, are the ferns, and next are the ohias. And to me that's very moving.
So that's what ties these things together. So the things I was drawing between Leslie's work and Heimir's work is the idea of re-inhabitation of a landscape. So the ferns are one of the first things that come in. He was talking about how the birds were driven off by the 2008 eruption, but also came back to nest within the volcanic environment. And same thing with the owl and the butterfly and the other bird that he mentions there. So that's the links between the shows. I think I very much, like Andre, who's very sensitive to the kind of sight lines we have here within the gallery, because part of the strength is looking at different sight lines, making those associations, or suggesting them to the audience. And it's always a wonder and delight when the audience actually gets it, to see what we've done kind of, subliminally, but to actually realize these connections.
And surely, of course, they're going to realize that we've got fissure 8 here and fissure 8 facing each other in painting and in aerial photography. But again, human habitation, as you mentioned, that's out of view there, but people can identify things that have been lost. But the homes that were threatened there and homes that didn't make it. I have friends living right here.
Really? Okay.
And I have friends who are no longer living right here.
Right. So it's this local identification I thought would also have a draw for people here. And Leslie is unique in that she does aerial photography from a helicopter.
Let's take a look at some of these. Some of them are easy to understand, striking, and some of them are harder to understand. Well, here I was looking at the black sand that is generated by lava flow's interaction with the ocean, this kind of constant pounding that produces the black sand. And I was telling Halldór also, hey, let's go to Richardson Beach because there's a black sand beach here. So we got black sand all over Iceland. It's not special for me, but just the idea that it can be generated over like a long period of time with waves pounding the lava. But on the other hand, I was reading that when you have hot lava meeting the ocean, it can also spontaneously create black sand because of that explosion of the lava, with that creating small pieces of obsidian
that becomes sand.
And what
so
we
there's
know-
two ways, yeah.
Sure, and what we know here, of course, is this is also transient.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's created by that event, but then over time it's going to go away. And our favorite black sand beaches,
Yeah.
there's a reason we don't let people take black sand.
We have black sand here.
It's transient.
This one attracted me because it was quite organic as a physician. I kind of related to it. To me, I told Leslie this looked like a placenta. So it was like, you know, an organic form in which you saw the volcano, the caldera, and you also saw kind of the cooling of the lava, so it's kind of alive, but also the kind of life force and heat, you know, coming, again, you know, I feel a palpable heat in this particular photograph.
There's a photo actually of Halemaumau
Yeah,
crater.
yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
is the very top of Kilauea from which the lava comes. Well, the lava comes from all sorts of places, but that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, I think the organic aspect of it, to me, appealed to me. Maybe as a doctor, partially, but also visually, I think it's a very, very striking. You know, it's kind of like the origin of the world, basically.
Okay. Well, let's go from these descriptive images of the beautiful volcanic activity here on the island, and let's take a look at some of the more abstract, more fantastical
Yeah, yeah.
musings on the notion of volcanoes.
Sure. Which one do you want to do first?
Well, one thing I've been talking with the other artists about is a theme of the show, I assume, is the interaction between human myth-making and the
That's one of the
volcanoes.
aspects, yeah. As I mentioned, it's
what will strike you?
geomorphology, indigenous beliefs, which goes in the mythology you're talking about, and the concept of deep or geologic time. Those are basically the three. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to look at this and that, and why don't we go with your choice?
Okay, well, let's start with Michelle. Michelle Schwengel-Regala is a illustrator as well as a visual artist. She works with art and science, and basically this is her, and I did want to have a wide range of objects in here and media, so
Sure.
that's sculptural, abstract. And so this is her take on the explosion. These are lava bombs that she's created out of anodized aluminum in different colors. The darker ones have been cooled as in lava bombs. And you know, the lava bombs are actually threatening because a lot of people are running away from the volcano, but they're not looking in the air where these bombs come. And actually people get injured, and some mortally so, through these lava bombs. One of the references that runs through the exhibition as well is the concept of a lava lake. So she actually did diving in Antarctica, where Mount Erebus has a lava lake, and it's not that common. There's a lava lake also in Nyiragongo, and there's a lava lake in Kilauea. So those three times together, it's not that common. Not all volcanoes have lava lakes. So that's something, again, that ties these works together. And we were trying to give this idea of an explosion that's frozen in time. So the lava bombs are in the air, they're about to land, some have already landed, and the contours of the anodized sculpture on the ground is resembling like the crater rim, maybe of Erebus, maybe another volcano, but a generic, maybe not generic, but a kind of a stand-in for all volcanoes. Yeah?
So Erebus that you describe is in Antarctica.
In
Let's bring
Antarctica.
another continent into the show.
We try to reach, because part of the exhibition also is for it to be educational. I hope that people will bring their students or their friends and talk about things like lava bombs, like Antarctica, like Iceland. And this is probably a really, really great segue here, because Arngunnur, who is actually Icelandic and a mountain guide, a travel guide within, lives between three different places where she's establishing residences. So we have Iceland here, we have the Oregon coast, and we have Onamea Bay, which is north of Hilo, where she's building a home now as we speak.
Wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.
And I noticed that between the panels there's a little bit of leakage.
Yeah, well, yeah, and the horizon line, of course, is what links them as well. So it's her questioning about, what is the link between different environments that are disparate in terms of geographic distance. So I think it's conveyed, very well here, and yeah, she's very excited to have a place here in Hawaii.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a hypothetical. If you could
sure.
toss in one more volcano or volcanic region, what would it be? Would it be Etna? Would it be Japan?
Well, the active ones now are in Iceland and Japan. I would say I think the country, if I'm not mistaken, that has the most number of active volcanoes, Indonesia.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So no, that would be one of my choices.
Where so much of the culture is in fact around the
Yeah.
volcanoes.
Yeah.
So much of the folk
I wanted to
belief.
mention though that I want to pronounce this right. Oreifjall, I'm trying to get that very close in Icelandic as I can, is one of the most threatening volcanoes in Iceland because part of my fascination was looking at volcanoes that were under forms of water. So I was looking at this,
So that's this
under,
right here.
under a glacier cap. And when a volcanic eruption the next one will happen, and will happen at some point in time, there's going to be an explosion between the glacier cap and the magma that'll cause massive flooding. That's a given. It's going to happen. When it happens, it's going to be devastating. So it's considered one of the deadliest, if not the deadliest volcano in Iceland. And
What's it near, do you know?
well, there are towns below it. I forgot the name of the town, but people are aware, and there's evacuation proceedings. They also have these walls that supposedly will stop them. I know in a previous flow, Halldór mentioned that they weren't able to stop the flow. But the other comparison I was making with Hawaii is that we have the underwater volcano that used to be called
Loihi.
Long Mountain, I think it's called, but now it's called Kamaehu Kanaloa. That's it. Yes. Kamaehu Kanaloa. I try to remember that. Okay.
I haven't heard that one yet.
So that again, the concept of deep time, it's like down below the surface of the water. It's not going to break the surface for 25,000, 100,000 years, people say. So that idea of deep time is something that resonates through all of this as well.
And some of the local hula halau have already created dances welcoming that mountain.
Good. And their ancestors will be dancing that
We're ready
in the
for
future.
Let's take a look at these wonderful pieces here by local artist.
Solomon Enos is an indigenous native Hawaiian artist that I worked with he was also in the Louisville show, along with the other two artists that I mentioned, and was also in a show that I've done in Santa Fe, New Mexico about nuclear colonialism. That's another topic.
Nuclear colonialism.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's about nuclear testing in places like French Polynesia.
I see.
Yeah, Christmas
Bikini
Island.
Atoll,
Yeah, exactly. All of that. Then the way the Marshallese have been displaced to Honolulu, and So
what is he giving us here?
Well, these are fantastical islands. I thought first they were aflame, but they're in clouds. These are, these maybe evoke for some people the sky cities of Star Wars, But basically, we were talking about new lands, and when I gave him the idea of new lands, he came up with these ideas of free-floating land masses that, come out of explosions, that come out of a birth of what I called fire, but basically of dynamic environments. And so I have to go look at the title again. It's Moku Punilele, Flying Islands. And when I presented the initial idea, he said, "Oh, I have a terrific idea also." I wanted to make some references to Pele because we were talking about indigenous beliefs, and Pele is represented here, but in a fractured form. It's kind of a pastiche, kind of a puzzle of works, but she is embedded in there somehow in his description.
So she's acrylic on Bristol board, arranged in tiles.
I mean, you can recognize a face there, but it's also a mix of things. He said this is partially H.R. Geiger, the guy that did Alien.
Okay.
And also Pele is in there, and Pere as is represented in Tahiti. Because the Tahitians are the ones that migrated onto Hawaii.
Now, how do the Tahitians represent her?
Well, I didn't find an active volcano in Tahiti, so
they brought them here.
But no, it's in a mix somewhere in this pastiche of images. Yeah, that's mainly the reference to Pere, and then we can talk about the relationships and legends with sisters and siblings. But it's this kind of fractionated image that includes elements of many, many stories.
Now I noticed the way the show is hung. I'm not sure, did you hang the show? Did Andre hang the show?
I had expert help.
I noticed
Andre is like a master at this, and I bowed to his expertise in this space.
EHCC Curator Andre Kramarsh is our film man right now, so you can't see him. I noticed that she's facing.
Absolutely, yeah. Again, we're talking about sight lines, right? So we're looking at,
Sure.
and this work here called Magma is also part of that as well. So, yeah.
Now, part of my fun with this one, I just
Yes.
learned from the artist, is that Pele is well known.
Derigongo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Congo is well
Yes.
known
Uh-huh.
and have generated generations and generations of stories. And I like that this is new. This is his own creation out of the magma, to which he's attributed new stories. And I think that's wonderful. A continuation of things.
He talks about this yin-yang effect where you can see the image from different sides, and there's a different shift, in the image that you can perceive from the other side.
So
Yeah. Very unique, this kind of, he talked about the technique of bleaching, right?
Yes.
Okay, right.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting.
No, it's fascinating. He's again participating in the Louisville show too with images of Muhammad Ali, who's one of his heroes. Yeah.
Well, to wrap up, would you remind us, what are the 3 things you think we should most see as themes of the show?
Geomorphism,
Geomorphism.
indigenous beliefs in terms of the legends, and the third would be deep and geologic time.
Deep and geologic time.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so these, I feel the show, takes us beyond lifetimes, beyond the limits of human imaginations. It kind of allows us to think about time on this earth, whether it's ours or the time of the earth, and then the context of that planet in the cosmos. I think that's kind of like wrapping it up.
I see. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank
My
you
pleasure.
for this beautiful, fascinating show.
Thank you. I hope that
I
many
think
more will
so
come and
resonate
enjoy it.
with Hilo and the Big
Thank you,
Island.
Larry. Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you for doing this.